Hi, Lisa.
Hi. We're here.
We are here. Indeed. Finally, we're here. I feel slightly on edge because I had a coffee. I don't usually drink coffee, and it makes me slightly anxious sometimes, but hey ho, we just ride it.
Yeah.
So would you like to introduce yourself for the viewers,
Okay.
listeners?
Well, my name's Lisa Lee, and I guess you've invited me here on your podcast to have a bit of a chat. And yeah, so I'm kind of local, close to you, live up the road, and I hold breath ceremonies. So that's how we met, didn't we? You came
Yes.
to one of my breath ceremonies at Purusha retreats. And yeah, so is that enough
Yes,
to
I'm
start
happy
off
with
with?
that. I've been intrigued by your work since you know, coming to sit with you, and it's absolutely transformational work that you're doing. And I just wanted to talk a bit more about the work that you do, um, talk about trauma and how the body keeps the score, how you got into this work, and finally, how was your trip to Peru? So these are the things that I'd like to cover um, on today's show. Hopefully, we're going to get you on for part two. Hopefully, we'll have the space to do it in person because it's so much better to do these meets in person. But for now, we'll
Yeah.
work with what we've got.
So where do you want to start?
I'm easy to go with wherever you want to start, right at the beginning, or what you're doing now, the work you're doing.
Well, I guess maybe it might make sense to sort of explain what I'm doing. So I do breathwork ceremonies. Um, so for people who perhaps don't know what breathwork is, that might be a good place to start. So breathwork is a modality that I use in my ceremonies. So it's a combination of breathwork and shamanic ceremony. So we're using the breath to get into a bit of a trance state so that we can do some deep inner work. And so I guess breath work, I don't know if you know about this, but breath work, kind of the modality itself was invented in the 60s. They used to do a lot of exploration with psychedelics, a lot of the scientists back then to heal, or psychotherapists, I should say, which is pretty much the same thing. They're still scientists, but anyway, they were playing with psychedelics for healing. Um, and then when psychedelics were banned in the US, they wanted to look for something else that was going to help people to tap into altered states of consciousness. So they looked at, tribes, they looked at yoga, and they realized that when you do this connected breathing, that it allows you to reach these altered states. And obviously that was a while ago, so there's loads of science that backs it all up now, which kind of explains it a bit better. But that's essentially what we're doing. We're using the breath to go into altered states of consciousness so that we can heal, basically.
So with reaching altered states through breath, is there an actual name for the type of breath work that you're doing? Like, is there a specific name?
Well, I trained in biodynamic breath work, but really
Mhm.
I'd be lying if I was to say that's biodynamic breath work, because it's not. Um, you've got many different types of breath work, rebirthing, holotropic, and then loads and loads of other breathwork modalities that different people have created, and they've sort of put together what they think is their modality. So mine is kind of, like I say, it's a mixture of breath work, but not just biodynamic. It's little bits from here and there, and also shamanic ceremony. So I use Icaros, for example, in my ceremony, and And yeah, different types of music to provoke different feeling. And I guess, yeah, it's a really, sometimes it's quite a complicated thing to explain because it's, I'm holding space. Yes, I'm teaching people to, I'm guiding people to connect to their breath, because the breath is what's helping us to get in touch with what's going on the inside. But really it's, it's just how I'm guiding it. So I would say that breath ceremony it's not a particular type of breath work. It's what I've kind of created.
Okay, that's amazing. So what type of the people that come to you, what's the main? Is there any issues, or are they coming to enhance their lives? Are they? What's the common thing of why people come to your space?
I mean, I guess it really depends. Some people have just heard about it, and and then they've been told to come and try it. Other people somehow have found it and they don't even know what they're getting themselves in for. So I think it's kind of a little bit magical sometimes how people end up coming. But obviously then there's people who reach out who, they need something. They don't quite know what. They want to feel better. They can't sleep. They're stressed. They're not happy. They want some change in their life. So all kinds of people come, really. Why did you come?
I came to experience your type of breath work. I've done something very similar, but not the way you help, not the way you do your hold your spaces, and you incorporated movement into it, which I found was absolutely amazing at releasing certain blockages that I had. And the breath work I did was about an hour. The one I did before coming to your place was about an hour and 20 minutes, but it didn't involve any movement. And I found myself like cramping and when I did it at yours and there was the movement involved, you working through those, blockages. It feels like blockages, energetic blockages within my body, which was causing me to seize up. And yeah, it was absolutely beautiful. And as well, just venturing deep into myself and releasing what hasn't been processed. So that's why I came to you, to just go deeper into myself and release whatever's not serving, whatever's holding me back.
Yeah.
Would you would you be able to explain, like, scientifically what goes on in the body for you to when using the breath work, what actually goes on internally?
Again, it's like, there's so many different ways that you can explain it and analyze it. I prefer to talk about it one specific way. But anyway, so in a kind of sense of like the nervous system, for example.
Yeah.
So you have your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. So your sympathetic is your fight or flight response, and your parasympathetic is your rest and digest. So you want to have a healthy nervous system. This is on a very basic level of, 3D living in a body, I guess. We want to be able to, relax. So what tends to happen is if we haven't sort of let ourselves flow between sympathetic and parasympathetic, which can happen in a variety of ways. You might go into fight or flight with your parents, but you're not going to punch your parents, are you? You're perhaps going to internalize that anger. Or you might, have really intense traffic on the way to work and have all this fight or flight, but you just hold on to it. And so anyway, you end up you may have suppressed a lot of these different energies from being expressed. We're English. we're told to calm down, stiff upper lip, like don't show that you're scared or you're angry. Even we're shamed about anger, we're shamed about tears, especially guys, not just in England but all over the world. Guys are shamed for crying. So these emotional responses, which are supernatural, so that we can live, and be connected to life and manage our energy, we're suppressing and suppressing and suppressing. So you can kind of end up with all this energy just whirling around inside of you. So that's kind of what people call anxiety. So you may find that you can't sleep at night, or you can't switch off and you can't relax. It's normal. This is how we live, don't we? In this go, 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 fight, 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 survival, survival. But most of us are not in survival anymore. Even if we were at one point, perhaps we're not anymore, but your body is still stuck in that fight or flight. And it can be very subtle, and it's also not the same for everyone, because other people may have felt overwhelmed by whatever. Different 9-to-5s might overwhelm one person. Having a child might overwhelm another person. Everybody's completely different, but again, our bodies, we react differently. Some of us go into fight and others can go more into disassociation or sort of collapse. So it's all about kind of, when you look at it in a nervous system kind of way, it's about tapping into that stuck energy and getting it to flow. So that you can, like I say, have a healthy nervous system, which allows you to, fight back if you need to, rather than freeze. How many people freeze when something happens? They're overwhelmed. And then, be able to rest as well. Because if we can't rest, if our parasympathetic nervous system doesn't come online properly, then our body can't digest properly, it can't heal itself. And so this is kind of the world that I sometimes struggle to explain. There's just so much to it. But at the end of the day, if you want a healthy, functioning body, then we want to, have a good energy flow and have a healthy nervous system, so that our bodies can actually heal themselves, which I think is totally possible, like, yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
No, that's
like,
it.
Okay. Yeah. So coming back to that, it's like, I witnessed this in most people's lives, that their bodies are physical, their bodies are stressed. They're in this fight or flight situation. Maybe they don't realize it because of going to work 9 to 5. They're doing a job that they don't like. Then they end up looking for a crutch, the disassociation part. They end up like using alcohol and stuff. So
yeah, exactly.
But then a lot of people don't realize that that's how they're living. That's the sad thing that this is why I was so inspired to get you on and talk about your work and share this, that how people can regain control back, regain control of themselves again, instead of living in this fight or flight situation.
Survival, yeah. And just
survival mode,
having to numb, because we all know what it's like when we're, when we've got some kind of addiction or crutch, whether it's food or alcohol, even down to social situations, having to have alcohol so that you can relax enough to talk, or a cigarette so that you can be calm enough to talk. Like, I certainly know that. I think most people can relate to something on that level. So, being able to have a more balanced nervous system so that we're not reacting, because we're really sensitive beings. But I think that it's just the programming and the way society is, that we're we're not listening to how we feel, and we're just kind of going along with stuff and overriding this emotional guidance system. We have this really intelligent, intuitive emotional guidance system, which allows us to know if this person feels safe, or this person feels dangerous, or this place or this job is right or wrong. And we kind of override that so many times that people lose that intuition and that sensitivity. So, it's kind of, there's so many ways of explaining breath work. It's very, there's a lot that's possible.
And there's so many ways that how people can that lose their intuition, like diet being another one of them. Like people, like we can have like we can think we're having a healthy physical lifestyle, but if your diet's not right, then the body's getting physically stressed. And you touched upon like how some people can relate to using like cigarettes as a crutch, which is gonna lead me to ask you this is leading me to ask you this question. So I've noticed like people that are into like therapy and stuff like that, where they help people, usually tend to come out, get into that work because of traumas they've had themselves. So they want to understand it. They end up getting into this work. So how did you stumble upon breath work, and how has it helped you?
Well, do you want the short version or the
Let's
the
go
long
with the long
version?
version. Let's go with the long version.
Okay. Well, I don't know. So there's a really long version though. This is the problem. See, I've had asthma since I was born. I've had, all kinds of health issues when I was young. So many different things that I could really talk about, but you'll have to read my book one day, because there just isn't enough time. I know you want to stay on here for a while, but there isn't enough time. But on a very basic, fundamental level, I wasn't given the emotional support that I needed for whatever I was going through, whether it was health issues or traumas or, just life. And I think that that's quite normal in the UK, across the world, in the 80s, and even now, like, so going through certain things, having, certain health issues and traumas and whatever, and then not having that emotional support can be so detrimental. And I think that I just took it all really badly, and I just did not feel inspired by anything. Not even joking. I just didn't learn anything. I would do all the things, but deep inside, I just didn't want to be alive. Like, I really didn't, and probably most people wouldn't have even noticed. But, I ended up smoking weed very young. I ended up just quitting school the first second that I could. Didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. Just felt very hopeless about everything. And then, as time sort of went on, again, you'll have to read the book for the whole bloody story. But then when I ended up living in London, and I started going to London Buddhist Center and also to Bikram yoga. And it was just, at a time when I was really low, really depressed, just not good at all. These things were like, it was showing me that there's something there. There's something that feels slightly better even. So I was going every lunchtime to London Buddhist Center. They did like a £1 meditation, and then I was going to yoga. But it still wasn't really helping that much. I was just very lost. And then as well, I couldn't really keep a job because I just couldn't function in this system. Like, it didn't make sense to me. Like, I could do pretty much anything. and I could do it really well for like a month, and then I would just literally just be so depressed. There was no passion for anything. I didn't know how to find my passion for life, so I was very like this. And then I somehow managed to get enough money together to just leave the UK, because I really felt a big part of it was the UK. Like, I really blamed it on this country. Not that I knew any different back then, but it was just everybody seemed to be drinking and doing drugs and partying and avoiding themselves. And I could see how much everybody was avoiding themselves. I could see how in pain so many people were, but nobody was admitting it. Nobody was seeing it. So I always looked like I was the one with a problem. I was the one who, was not very good, but I could see everybody else was kind of in the same boat. So that was quite like awful. So I ended up saving money, just got out of here, and then started traveling. And just, it took me a while just to sort of, just to kind of land from the madness and the chaos of just trying to fit into a system when I was already very traumatized. It's not easy to try and, keep going every day when you feel like that. I didn't feel good at all. And then can't really think off the top of my head how long it took me until I found breathwork. But I think I was doing like a yoga teacher training in Bali that I'd been told about, this guy who does these amazing trainings. And it wasn't so much about being a yoga teacher, even though obviously you got your yoga teacher training certificate, but he really kind of wanted to show you yourself, so he really took us through a month-long process of not just teaching you how to do yoga, because one of the first things that he said to us was, this training isn't going to make you a yoga teacher, by the way. Like, he was really like blunt and just like, to be a yoga teacher, you need to have a practice every day. You need to live and breathe yoga. But what he did want to do with us was to help us to heal, because he believes, who the hell are you to think you can teach yoga to somebody if you're not a healed, healthy, human? So a lot of the stuff that he put us through was very challenging. He'd put us in a group and tell us, like a small group, and say, right, so this exercise, you have to tell each other what you don't like and what you like about each other, stuff like this, which people would just freak out. But it was so, we got so much from these difficult exercises that he put us through, because it just shows you how we judge people, what projections we're putting onto people, So it was a really intense process. And during that month, he got us to try breath work. And he'd said to me at the start, this is going to be really powerful for you. And it was, but not in a sense of releasing emotion. It was literally the first time I think my lungs had ever properly filled up with air, because I've had, asthma. I've, really struggled with breathing my whole life. And I just remember having this feeling of like, oh my God, my lungs like filled up properly. And then I just felt amazing. And a lot of the other people were having more emotional responses at the end when we were sharing. And I didn't really understand. Like, I just was so excited that I'd found this thing that made me feel better. Like, I couldn't believe that I actually felt good, because that was such a foreign feeling to me. So that's kind of where I stumbled across it. But then it kind of kept following me. Like, I would go different places, and then they would just randomly be doing a breathwork course, or, different places I was living around the world. It just kept cropping up, and I kind of knew that I was going to end up doing it, but I didn't chase it. It just kind of chased me. So yeah, that's how the long version of how I came across it.
Yeah, that's interesting. The thing that stands out the most to me there is the emotional regulation. Like, I think that could have possibly been the cause to a crazy downward spiral, which a lot of people, again, I always advocate for understanding that, emotional regulation, and especially teaching the young ones how to control their emotions. I think that could be the root of the root cause of a lot of people's stress and
Mm.
traumas, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, there's just so many different ways of looking at it because it's
Mm,
unprocessed stories that we've been through, things that we haven't spoken about, like
mm,
even just that very simple act of just telling somebody this happened to me and having somebody listen to that, it's helping your brain unravel from the trauma. So yeah, there's emotional regulation, which is the energy like we were talking about before, in motion. So if we don't let that energy move, this can create blockages. And then there's the beliefs that we create around the feelings that we've suppressed. There's something wrong with me. I'm broken. I'm never going to feel better. Nobody understands me. I'm all alone, So there's so many different, you know,
mm,
things that are sort of layered on top of what can be very simple if we're more conscious as parents and meeting our children with understanding and just listening and giving them love and support. And I'm not saying that my parents didn't, but it's working class England. They had their own traumas. People just weren't aware of, and they still aren't. A lot of people still aren't aware of emotional regulation and how important it is to let kids feel what they're feeling and not just shut it down and say, shut up. you know, Having
yeah.
patience.
I was just about to
Mm.
go on to talk about that. Yeah, but like, I've noticed some kids, they when they're misbehaving, I see some parents shout at them, and they just don't want to deal with their erratic behavior. But instead, I I think personally, this is my personal opinion, but I think that when a kid is showing some sort of like frustration or agitation, I think that's the most important part for the parent, for them to not get frustrated and put their
Which is
bullshit
easier
to the
said
side,
than
and
done, though, because
show the
the thing
child.
is, when
Yeah.
the child is, say, expressing, like you say, frustration, then this is going to touch upon perhaps all of the traumas that the adult had around when they were a child being shouted at, and all kinds of stuff
Mm,
that's going on inside of them. So this is why it's really helpful to do the inner healing work before you have kids. Or at least at least take some time.
I wish I'd known that.
But no, I'm joking. No, it's never too
But
late
it's
to
never
start. And
too
I'm
late to
actually
start.
joking a little bit there, but like,
No.
it's like we we can't really judge parents because they're the same as the children. They also need to be heard, and when they're not able to cope with a
Mm,
child's big reactions, I get it, like that's why I haven't had children. If I'd have had children when I was 20 years old, I would have just repeated the exact same patterns. Um, so this is why hopefully as time goes on, we can encourage more people to take the time to do the healing work so that we can slowly change how this society looks.
mm. Yeah, Wim Hof mentioned something which is easily overlooked, in terms of how your body can get actually physically stressed without you realizing. And it's the shallow breathing again, back down to breath work, because when you do your breath work, it's all about taking that air in and really oxygenating your body. According to Wim Hof, is that in your normal day, in a person's day-to-day life, who just goes 9 to 5, goes home, watch TV, and goes to bed, they're always on this constant motion, shallow breathing. They're just always shallow breathing, which means that their body's not getting oxygenated. And again, it's just about being consciously aware of these things, which, like you said, it's easier said than done. I want to ask you, what is energy? How could you explain? Yeah, what is energy? How could you describe what energy is? Oh,
we are just energy, like everything, whether it's the table or you or everything. We're just a big, huge, massive energy. So, does that answer it?
You know what? I like that answer. You just hit as soon as you said energy is everything. I was like, okay, yeah, let's put that to bed. Okay, that's done. So I'm gonna bring it back to the when you were doing yoga, and your yoga instructor was saying, I'm here to heal you and stuff. So what was that process like in the yoga? Did they explain like what it's, the certain poses or whatever it is that you're doing, what it's actually doing internally? Are you removing blockages?
I don't remember what he said. This is a long time ago, but like, I mean, I've been on a long journey. I've done lots of different, courses and this and that and whatever. But I mean, that was probably quite early on. And I do remember at the end of the course, we had to go have a little interview with him, and he was like, and I'm there thinking, how it is in life. Everybody's like, well done, you're amazing, congratulations. Nope. He was like, you need to be more present on your mat. And I was just so like shocked because I didn't even know that I wasn't present in my body, And it's been a long journey of getting back into my body. This is why I didn't just go, oh, breathwork's the answer, I'm going to train in it. I didn't. I carried on with my meditation, my yoga. I went and did Vipassana, which, Vipassana, do you? Yeah. So Vipassana,
yes.
Which that was a huge, process. So Vipassana is pretty much the same as breathwork, but a much slower version. So if you sit and meditate for long periods of time, things come to the surface so that you can feel them. But it's more like the breathwork modalities where you don't move, for example. So things come up and you kind of just feel it and just integrate it into your system. So I spent a lot of time meditating. I spent a lot of time in silence, a lot of time alone, a lot of time writing and, exploring my own crazy brain and, my consciousness and, really practicing the power of now, like Eckhart Tolle style. So I wouldn't particularly say there's anything to report back about the yoga, because I mean, I love yoga. It's great. Like, it's good exercise, but I'm not a yoga teacher, so I'm not going to pretend to be one. But, why I love yoga is, again, to regulate. I got really into yin for a long period of time because that's what I personally needed. I needed to calm down. I needed to slow down. I needed to be able to get into my body. So yin yoga was really appealing to me. And I love Bikram because, again, it's quite meditative. But yeah, I guess, of course, you're using the breath. It's the same kind of idea. You're using the breath. You're breathing into the body. You're letting the energy flow. So yes, you do, have the opportunity to release blockages. You can cry in yoga. In yin yoga, I think that was quite a normal thing. Many people would cry because we store different emotions and memories in the hips. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's, you've just reminded me of another thing which I don't know much on, and like, just like you said, when you got certain emotional blockages, you feel it on certain parts of your body. So I don't know if you know much about, could you tell us what you know about certain emotions and certain parts of your body where if you're feeling aches and pains, it probably could be related to a certain emotion that's not been
Yeah, I mean, I
expressed? Or
think it's all very unique, like you can kind of try and figure it all out, but I think it's every different person is completely different. When I'm working with people, yes, I can, there's a few things that I can just say, does this resonate? But it might not, like it might be something else. So it really depends on the person. But for example, grief, they say grief is normally kept in the lungs. But grief can be kept all over as well. And, tension can be stored in many different ways in the body. So yeah, the jaw can be like frustration, where we've clenching our teeth and we're frustrated and angry, but we're holding it inside. The psoas muscle is where we can store a lot of trauma from where we've literally sort of gone into contract. So yeah, it really depends on the person.
The body is such an interesting thing, the way it communicates to us, and again, it's about paying attention and listening to what your body's saying and responding. Yeah, it's a very, very smart and complex
Yeah, I
thing.
mean, it's kind of
Energy
like
system.
our bridge to help us to learn, I guess, because if we just didn't have a body and we're just floating around and whatever, but the body helps us to learn, doesn't it? It's kind of like a tool where we can
Yeah.
recognize. Again, I think that we still haven't scratched the surface probably in how intelligent the body is and
Yeah.
how how sensitive we can become. I think that we're still in the very early days of like really recognizing like what an aerial for energy and information our body is. Because we can be quite like up in the head trying to figure things out as humans. But yeah, the body's definitely an interesting tool that we're given.
Yeah. How did you find the silent retreat? Like, really going into yourself. I'm looking to try one, and like, to be quite honest, for me, I smoke and I do this, and it's like, it's really daunting
Yeah,
to think about
people
it as
can't
well. But I've
people
heard
can't
it's
even like,
beneficial. But it's
I know people who can't even have music off. Like they have to have something all the time, So I don't know. For me, it was quite an obvious thing to go and be without people, without, movement, without, for me, it's just quite obvious. Like if I want to really face what's going on inside of me, then I have to kind of listen. So Vipassana, when I went, so I'll tell you the truth, when I first sat there, because I did mine in Thailand, and so you sit and you just meditate for 10 days, I think it is. So when I first sat there, I remember, because it was like a Buddhist monastery, and it was all very like plain, there was like sort of some fields, like just flat lawns, I guess. Just like a bamboo kind of hut thing that we all sat inside. Everything was very basic, like just very basic concrete structures and whatever. And I remember sitting there and just thinking like, this looks like the killing fields of Cambodia. Like, that's how I felt. It was like really dark and oppressive, and I just felt like shit. And anyway, then by the end of the 10 days, it was like, wow, there's dragonflies, just, the colors. And it really showed me what I was looking at life through. And it's me, it's the filter that I'm carrying. So, this is why I always say breathwork is it's Vipassana on speed or something, because you can do it super fast, but it's the same because you're just working through your consciousness and your body. But that took a lot of effort and a lot of work to do all of that. And I can remember being shown a vision, something to do with animals, that they're our friends or something like this. But I think there was only one like emotional thing that came up in the actual 10 days. And that was something to do with an ex-boyfriend. I can't remember. Some pain, like recent pain. I think it was like some recent grief. But then when I left, I was really sensitive. And then I can't really remember, but something else happened in my life and it just brought out so much pain from my body. So then I ended up going to New Zealand, to Queenstown, and then I was doing walking meditation, like walking Vipassana. So they teach you how to do this as well. So I continued doing it. And then I came back to the UK, and then I locked myself. I was staying with my parents at the time and locked myself in my room and continued doing it. And I actually learned that you got to be a bit careful when you have PTSD doing Vipassana. And I learned how to do it in a more gentle way. So yeah, I learned a lot from doing Vipassana. But again, it's the essence of my work. It's meditation, really. It's Vipassana. So yeah.
Yeah, you've such an experience. So what sort of timescale did you have all these experiences? Like how long?
I don't know. I kind of
Roughly?
went like early 20s off traveling, left London, and then so yeah, up until, I don't know, kind of lost track of time, but I came back to the UK just before lockdown. But I had already been holding space around the world for quite a number of years before I properly came back here. So yeah, something about sometime around that.
Yeah, I've been enjoying reading your blogs. Yeah, very interesting. When they come in and I don't have time to read it, I'm like, save it for later,
Really?
see what she's talking about this time. So yes, very interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting. And yeah, you're so inspiring in so many ways. And like I said, you've been on my radar for quite some time because of the amazing work that you do. And I'm hoping that this is going to inspire other people to look within, just like how your story is inspiring in the way everything was chaotic on the outside and it made everything chaotic on the inside. And for you to find yourself where you didn't have to look for anything externally to bring you that
Well, I tried
satisfaction or
everything and it
peace
didn't
of
work.
mind. Right, fair enough. And then it led you to going to go deep within yourself. And
yeah,
that's where all the answers are. So for me, you are absolutely inspiring. And I'm just so hoping that, people can feel inspired by this, because, we need to see change in the world for better as well, instead of seeing things going downhill and people are eating fatty foods and just getting more obese. And, we need more people to wake up. Wake up.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring it to an end, Lisa. I'm not gonna go on and on. I think what you've shared so far is like, it's touched me, like, and it's made me think as well. But one thing I forgot to ask is, how often do you practice yourself, like breath work, to keep somewhat of a balance within your life?
I mean, listen, it's a hard question to answer because, like, you have to remember, like, I spent years and years and years of solidly working on myself, you know? So when I'm holding space, I'm breathing with the people, you know? And
Okay.
I've pretty much
Mm.
kind of like practiced meditating enough that I'm present in my life, you know? So it's not that often that I'm like, right, I need to do breath work. But saying that, I have done a little bit this week
Mm.
because, you know, same as everybody else, we're going through like all these like shifts in consciousness, you know, on this planet. It's a lot to process, but yeah, I mean, I've spent years doing it solidly, and I think that for me personally anyway, it's like I spent all those years meditating so that now I don't have to, you know, because I am present. I'm not stuck in my head all the
Mm.
time. You know, I'm in my body. So things don't normally like get away without me noticing them. So I'm kind of it's hard to explain. It's like I'm always doing breath work, but not how you would notice it, you know? Like I'm always present
Yeah.
and dealing with whatever's there, but it's not so often that I would do like, yeah, like myself a ceremony or whatever.
Mm. Yeah, the work never ends, does it? It never ends. I was gonna go into how your trip was to Peru, and there's another thing which I forgot to ask you about, which maybe we can leave till next time. Fortunately, we experienced a slight technical issue towards the end, and this opens up space for part 2, soon to come.